Welcome to Be the Voice. The focus of our show is to share best practices from thought leaders in the B Corp community. Every week, we focus on a set of 3 topics: people, how to align people behind your organization's mission and vision; processes, how to optimize the processes connected to the certification or recertification effort; and finally, challenges, how to overcome the major challenges that are headed our way. Every week, we start with a short microtraining followed by an extended amount of time for audience engagement. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Craig Forman to the stage. Craig comes to us from CultureC Consulting, and the topic he's going to talk about today is the key to building culture. Listen up. Craig, welcome to Be the Voice.
Hey everybody, my name is Craig Forman, and let's see here. I have 15 minutes to talk to you about listening up, right? The title of this is, how do we build effective organizations, and how do we do it? We have by listening. It's critical in our relationships, it's critical in our individual relationships, and what I've learned in my journey is just as critical if we're going to build intentional organizational cultures. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Craig Forman. I'll start by saying that my journey into this world started as a child, really. I had a little bit, my parents split, and in that, starting around age 12, I moved around a lot, both states and schools, and I found that I had a unique ability to relate to other people. I liked people, but I leaned into that as a survival mechanism. And that was the first time I realized I was so intrigued by people, how they worked, and I needed to lean on that for myself. Which really led me, it was a way at first to survive, but I knew it was something I really cared about. And it led me on an interesting journey, right? When I wanted to go to college, I didn't have money, so I joined the military. I spent 4 years in the Air Force as a linguist. What a great experience talking about culture and organizations to have that experience, but that was part of my journey. And then I went back and got my undergraduate degree. I used the GI Bill to do that. And I worked in restaurants. I worked at nightclubs. I had all kinds of different jobs. And again, an opportunity to work in the world and see the world and understand it a little bit better and have those experiences. And in all of that journey, there's something I realized the first part of my career, which was that work can be better both for humans and for organizations. And this idea that they're at odds, we either have to be high performing or coddling, is not truth. I think we all, if you think about it, have had an experience where you have had both, where you've felt like you're on a team, it works well, you are motivated and inspired, you want to be part of it, and the output is high. That's what we're seeking. So whatever side of the equation you sit on, you're an executive leader running an organization thinking about effectiveness, or you are big on people and you just believe that if I focus on people that we can get there. The truth is both are important. And either way, listening to people is good. If you are a business-minded person, it's good for business. If you're human-minded people, it's just the right thing to do, and it's what drives me. So I continued on that journey. I got my undergraduate degree in business, and then I moved to California and began the career that I really have today, and that was the beginning. I started in higher education. I decided to go back to school and got my degree in organizational psychology. It was the only degree that called my name if I was going to do this in the evenings and at night, but I cared so much about it. And again, I wasn't super focused, but I cared about it, and there was a passion. And coming out of that in 2011, right, entering the tech world in the Bay Area, it was like, how do I make this happen? And another important thing happened in my own journey, in my own growth, which is I got clear on my purpose. My purpose at the time, I wasn't sure exactly how it came together, but I'd done these things. I cared about people, was to help the world work better by improving the places we work. And I'll say that again, help the world work better by improving the places we work. I knew fundamentally, when it was all said and done, that was how I wanted to leave my mark professionally, and it meant so much to me. Eventually letting that guide me, I got into HR technology. I worked at Achievers doing recognition and rewards. I went to LinkedIn. I looked at talent. And then in 2017, I landed at a company called CultureAmp. CultureAmp, some of you might be familiar with. It is a B Corp. It works with a lot of B Corps. Essentially, it was a tool that allowed organizations to start to run their own listening exercises, their own engagement surveys. It doesn't have to outsource it. You could run it yourself. You could have all of the chops of high-end organizational psychology built in, run a great survey, and then have all the dashboards and the information available to you, not dependent on an outsider. And in that role, I got to work with organizations, hundreds of them, helping them think about this. And as an organizational psychologist, the light bulb went off for me because up to this point, I just worked on solutions, recognition. How do we think about talent? But in this work with the tool that I was working with, I got to sit and say, wait a second, let's just look at all of it. Let's do a diagnostic and let's listen. And now let's use data. And for me, as somebody who's passionate about this space, a real aha went off in how we can work with our organizations and the power of listening. So let's just start. I'm going to share a framework with you in a minute about how we think about it and a couple tips and tricks. But first, what's the challenge? What did I learn along the way about this process? Here I was seeing the power of helping organizations listen and how they could then take data and have a more data-informed approach. But what gets in the way? The first thing I learned is that our organizations are built around more of the left brain thinking, right? Analytical, metrics driven, goal oriented. That's what it takes to really start, in many ways, a lot of a business. And that's important. But the problem is culture doesn't seem to be that way. It's relational, it's fuzzy, it's hard to get your head around. So when push comes to shove in a world where we're thinking quarterly, where we're thinking about short-term results, sometimes if I can't make sense of something, I just keep going back to what I can make sense of, the linear thing, the numbers. But what's missing is then we're constantly kicking the can down the road of how do we take hold of culture? I get it. To business operators, it's not why you started the business. You started it with a product, an idea, and then this is something that picks up. And then it's how do we get our heads around it? But what I learned is it's not as complex as you may think, and it is solvable with a little bit of investment, with a little bit of support. This thing that seems so fuzzy doesn't have to be, right? Also, what we're doing currently is we're making big decisions based on anecdotes and gut feelings of oftentimes a small group of people that has a disproportionate impact on others. So what I'm seeing is when I go and work with organizations, when we can start to put a light and a lens and quantify this, things shift, different decisions get made. Your belief that, oh, well, that team doesn't really like that leader. And then you look at the data and say, you know what, they really do like the leader. What they don't like is how communication is coming across from the executive leadership team. What they're struggling with is their systems and processes, right? Until that data was there, that leader may have been let go of, continually compounding this problem because there's no data. So we have to move away from just simply anecdotes to some sort of data set to help guide us in that. And then there's the barriers. And I want to say this to anybody out there running an organization, the human barriers that we all have, right? There's a saying that we all want to, have a noble cause, but no one wants to be scrutinized along the way, right? That's part of the problem is that when we do this, if I just say to a leadership team, we're going to run a survey, I don't want a light bulb shine on everything that I do. I just want to get the objectives. This is just going to slow things down. So fear kicks in, imposter syndrome. I'm getting the job done, but maybe they'll see that we're doing a little off here. So I always go into an organization like that's understandable. That makes sense. But oftentimes, just like in other parts of our life, usually when we pull back and we look at everything, it's not so bad. It's usually not so bad. And the truth is we're not being responsible if we don't take a moment to look. It's not just about you. Oftentimes as a leader, you're making decisions that are impacting people's lives. You sit at the top of a pyramid and sometimes you got to take yourself out of the equation. You're a leader, just like you have your sales numbers and your marketing numbers, you need your numbers around your people to make the same sorts of decisions. And if fear is getting in the way or dragging your feet because I don't know if I don't look, it doesn't really exist, get the support you need to get through that. Right? It's critical. Work with somebody. My consultancy is all set up around helping organizations do this work. And a big part of that is really helping ease the leadership into this and realizing it's not so bad. It's like putting a Fitbit on. Let's just start taking a look. Things will change. It's the only way things will change. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to talk to you about a framework that I think is really helpful. This is everything I do in my work with organizations. Like I said, helping them think about how do you want to approach your employee listening? How do you set it up? How do you run a great exercise, in this case, an engagement survey, let's say? How do you take that in, process it, and then get to action? That's the framework. To run this well, it's the same thing I learned when I did signals intelligence in the military. It is a collection framework. Collect, we have to get good information. Understand, we have to synthesize and understand that information, and we need to take action, right? If we don't take action, it doesn't matter, right? So that's critical, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. We're going to break that down into those three. So let's talk about collection first. The first thing in usually any sort of collection exercises, you are going to go out to some environment and send a signal saying, we are trying to collect information, right? Please give us an update, like that in military terms. Yes, there's what we talk O&A, there's this kind of over just pulling information in, but when we are actively looking for information, like when we're running a listening exercise, we have to go out and say, here's what we're doing. So the first part, how are you communicating out to your organization? How do you make sure that people feel safe? What structures are you using a third party or not? And if you're not, what are your safety mechanisms, right? You're asking people for information. If they don't trust that it's gonna be used well, or they're not sure, you have to have some layer in there to make them feel safe. And this is your communication. You might use a third party tool that has some security built in, but you have to think about that, right? Also, why are you asking what you're asking? This is the initiative we go through in the beginning with organizations. You have to be thoughtful about what we're asking. What's the goal? When this is all said and done, what do we want to learn? And where are we going with this? Something I talk a lot about with organizations is questions send signals. Don't just grab any template and slap it down. Go through line by line. What signal are you sending by asking that question? If you have a workforce that doesn't have a lot of say over their flexibility and you ask them a question about flexibility in their work, you are basically going to seed an issue that doesn't exist by asking that question. So if they don't have control over it, they don't have any input, don't ask that question and make it an issue. And vice versa, you have to ask yourself when you're going through this, if I ask this question and I get information back that points me into the direction that I need to do something, am I willing and can I do something about it? If not, we often recommend don't ask the question if you can't do anything about it, which is important. And then it's really working on your question set. Don't willy-nilly do this. If you're going to write your own questions, have somebody review those with you. Look over it. Questions are really fickle, right? We have a lot of things like double barrel. My leader, communicates a vision that inspires and motivates me. I might read that with an organization and say, do they inspire you or do they motivate you? Are those two one and the same? Is it okay they're together? But oftentimes we write questions that we call double barrel. We're asking multiple questions in one. And to properly do analysis, I can't understand that on the back end. What was answered? Tight, clean, remove jargon, work with somebody or use a good, strong sample set and really go through those one by one to make sure you've written good questions that you are able to respond to and act on, you'll understand, right? So I will ask everybody here, we're going to talk about two more phases, but the first thing is, how's your organization with Collect? Are they doing a good job with this? If not, that's the first piece, right? Next, we move to understand. This is the power of the pause. There's a lot of literature right now with like self-help and individual books of the difference between stimulus and response and that power of pause in between, the moment to decide how we're going to respond. Same thing holds true when we do listening activities in our organizations, like that moment of pause to reflect and not just react. A lot of data is going to be coming back and you need to understand that information before you make some sort of error in how you approach it. Hey, who said this? Well, like that will undermine what you're doing. So take that moment. And what do we do in that moment? First is I think about any sort of these sorts of tools. If you're an organization doing this and listening, is a diagnostic tool, not a solutions tool. And what I mean by that is think about going periodically to the doctor and doing your full blood workup, right? We want to look at everything so we can identify, are there outliers? What's going on? What can we shave away? Not an issue. How does it have impact on what we're trying to do? And get to distill what are the most important areas to diagnose that. And what does that mean? That means that you're probably going to have another conversation, but at least now you know where to look, what rock to turn over in your approach to going and spending time with your people. If you try to do it all, you may never get there. But if you understand that the females on this team feel 8 points different around performance management than your male employees, you might want to have a conversation and try to understand that a little bit better, right? If they're having problems with their systems and processes, if they're not believing the open and honest two-way communication is happening, let's go learn more. So the pause is when a survey closes as quickly as possible. Can you dig into that? Ask some questions of yourself, of your teams, go learn, right? So you can understand how to react. Some things to think about if you're doing this in a robust way and what some of the better tools will do it will tell you what is the relationship to answers to the outcome, engagement usually. That means just because you have a low score, it doesn't mean it's the place you want to focus. A lot of organizations get hung up here, right? What we want to understand is what's the relationship to engagement. If it's a high relationship and a low score, we probably want to focus there. Benchmarking, do you have any ability to benchmark externally, but more importantly, internally? If I'm talking to a leader or a manager, I want them to see how they're doing against the organization. That's who they're competing with, not the world. Can we just continually improve and up our game? And that's done through proper benchmarking of your peers and external for executive leadership team. And then also, how do you deal with those comments and the follow-up? Comments are tricky. Do you have a tool that's going to help you with that? And if you have a lot of comments, to synthesize that and understand it. With AI, we can do a lot more there. So be thinking about that. Use focused, repeatable conversations to go deeper, right? That when we learn from these tools, we can say, here's what we're going to learn. Just like when you're interviewing to hire, let's make sure we ask the same question of different groups of people. Consistency, validity, reliability. These aren't just one-off conversations. If you are true about gathering information, you have to do it in a way that's valid and reliable, or bias will creep in, right? So that's important. Finally, act. So what? So you do all this, but so what? Action is what's so critical. And how do we go from taking information, writing and disseminating a great survey or a way to collect information? Could be a survey, could be speaking to people, but it's done in a mechanical and methodical way. And then how do we take action? So if we listen without taking action, that erodes trust. And this is one of the things that really is the most unfortunate, is that if I could ask all of you how many people have taken a survey and never heard anything back, I imagine most of us have had that experience. How did that feel? Did that motivate you? Did that make you feel closer or connected to your organization? So here we are engaging these exercises to learn from and be in relationship with our people. And you take all this information and you're running around as an executive team and they never hear back. They trust you less and don't think it means anything. And the saddest part is that oftentimes organizations that are doing a lot of work are just not communicating back well and helping people understand what they've done, and it undermines the effort. So it's one of the most unfortunate things I see in this work, is that they quickly slip into data input and not realizing we're in conversation. If we don't follow up, that's not good. Employees simply want to be heard and seen in the end of the day. For you to go back and say, we listened to all of you, here's what we came up with, here's what we're going well, and here's what we're challenged, and here's what we're going to do about it based on your information, and this is why, goes a long way. It might not be the thing I wanted, but now I understand why you chose that, and you're telling me what you're going to do about it. You listened. Guess what? When you run that survey again, I'll probably give you information. So if you're out there thinking, oh, my people are just hitting a survey fatigue, I will say to you, chances are it's not survey fatigue, it's lack of action fatigue. And I'll say that again, lack of action fatigue. We live in a world where people are giving you information all day long. They're happy to give you information if they think it means something, and they're going to get something in return. So always think about that. If you're going to run one of these initiatives, be very focused on the follow-up. You're not solving. You don't have to come on the heels of this and solve everything. And that's another hang up where people have an issue. Simply saying, we listened, here's what we heard. Over the next month, we're going to be listening to some people, some teams, we're going to have conversations, and in a month, we're going to come back and tell you what we heard and what are some things we're going to do about it. That is action. So free yourself of trying to solve it and be overwhelmed by, I don't know how to solve culture. They don't want you to solve culture. Culture is never solved. What they want to do is feel heard and seen, that they are part of the conversation, driving the direction, and how their voice is included in that. And you can do that so easily. And then I'm gonna share a really simple framework that every time I share it, it's loved, about change management, right? You run one of these things, you go back, you synthesize, you spend time with it. And let's say you pick one or two things, one or two, because you can do something and communicate back out. And here's a framework for change. Change is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Pick a thing, come up with 2 things you want to do about it, and communicate 3 times, the beginning, the middle, and the end. I'll say it again. Change is easy as 1, 2, 3. Pick one thing, come up with 2 things you want to do about it, and communicate 3 times. If you do that, you will be amazed at how your people receive it. And don't overdo it. Maybe 2, 4, 6. Pick 2 things, come up with 4 things you want to do, and communicate probably still 3 times. After that, organizations start to break down. People don't know what's going on. Look, you can do other small things behind the scenes, but don't miss the point of this survey. Is more about getting data to you. And when you listen, it's about being in conversation with your people. And then repeat, collect, understand, act, repeat every 6 months, every year. Do it again. You are in a conversation. The world's changing, your people are changing, your products are changing. You have to stay connected and always listening. It's an evolution. You are not solving culture. It's complex. You will never solve it. All you're doing is being responsive about it and responsible, right? This is a B Corp group. How does this connect? B Corp, people, planet, profit. I think it's directly aligned. I can't see a world where you're building a business focused on people, planet, and profit, and you are not listening to your people. You're not in conversation with your people. I've worked with the best leadership groups in the world, but when I look at those results, what they think versus what the people think is different. Often there's a bias. You need to have that feedback mechanism to make sure you're right sizing what you believe and what you think, and is it truly in alignment with your people so you're making decisions with them. It's an operational muscle, right? So to live these values, to do this, you have to get into this operational muscle of listening, right? It is a process, it is a journey. It's not perfect, but not doing it just pushes it under the surface. These things are there and they're happening. I'm newer to this whole B Corp world, but I feel like the alignment is so clear. I can't imagine a world where an organization that's living up to these values doesn't have a structured way to listen to their people and incorporate that information in their decision making if they're going to build an organization that's focused on people. We reduce bias by doing this, right? By simply showing people we are biased by nature as humans, right? I know if I have 10 leaders and a team of 1,000 people, what they think is different than what other people think. Therefore, they have bias in their decision making. We have to offset that. We need to build trust. This exercise builds trust, and it creates sustainable organizations with our people, right? This is how we build together. So culture isn't something you solve. It's something that you steward. And be intentional about your listening. Having one-off conversations with a few people is not organizational listening, especially as you get to 70, 80, 100 employees and more. You're having the same number of conversations you've always had, but you are getting a fraction of the information, and you can easily believe that that's the truth. And without a way to validate that, you can go astray and carry a lot of organizational cultural debt in the process. So we need to take a moment to listen with intent, understand, pause for that understanding, and then take specific action that we can go and measure back. That's how we build organizations and work together. And I believe it's directly aligned with the B Corp work. Thank you very much. Hopefully I probably went a little longer than I needed to, but I hope this was valuable and there were tips and tricks in there. Please, if you ever want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out, let's have a conversation. This is what I do. I help organizations approach this, think about this, and more importantly, drive this information into the organization, support managers and leaders to process it, put down those defense mechanisms, really hear what's being said and come up with strategies to enhance and build the organizational culture, right? Good for people, good for the organization. We can have happy people, high-performing organizations, and that's the goal. Thank you very much. I hope to be in touch.